يا طير دخلك يا طير دشرني جزاك الغير يا طير دخلك يا طير دشرني جزاك الغير عيني ما تريد تشوفك من يوم ما ولفت الغير يا طير 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 دخلك يا طير زقمتك وانت في العش كنت صغير ما فيك غش زقمتك وانت في العش كنت صغير ما فيك غش كنت علي دموعي رش من دمعة عيني أسقيك يا طير 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 دخلك يا طير يا طير دخلك يا طير دشرني جزاك الغير يا طير دخلك يا طير دشرني جزاك الغير عيني ما تريد تشوفك من يوم ما ولفت الغير يا طير 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 دخلك يا طير كنت من كبودي طعمك من دمعة عيني أسقيك كنت من كبودي طعمك من دمعة عيني أسقيك والله ما كنت بربك لو كنت تطلع شرير يا طير 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 دخلك يا طير يا طير دخلك يا طير دشرني جزاك الغير يا طير دخلك يا طير دشرني جزاك الغير عيني ما تريد تشوفك من يوم ما ولفت الغير يا طير 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 دخلك يا طير
When we went to the Fez and I walked up those stairs and saw that interior, I had stepped into that Arabian fantasy.
Live from the Fez.
And I was immediately transported to all that I found exotic and appealing and what drew me in.
And in the bar, they put a ceiling, something like this. They put drapes up there, poured cement in it, let it dry, and took the material off. And then they painted stripes. So it looked exactly like a tent. It was just gorgeous.
It was dark, smoke-filled. The men were usually dressed in suits, very dark, very mysterious looking, black hair, and usually shades. I really thought I had stepped into another world, and I had.
Well, the Fez is a family tradition in our family and something we still talk about to this day.
I think the Fez is a landmark in the music world, especially the Middle Eastern music world. I compare it to the Copacabana on the East Coast in New York. It's really that kind of a place where if you're in LA and you don't go to the Fez, you haven't been anywhere.
My first experience of seeing belly dancers and listening to these fabulous musicians was at the Fez.
It was the place. It was where the dancers that you want to see are going to be dancing.
People felt there is a home for them.
When Lou Shelaby first opened the Fez, it was more a Hollywood thing. People were curious about this exotic culture. And then eventually the people, the culture, took over, and that was their place. The Fez became important both as a place where Arabs could come and say, this is our culture, and then Hollywood was stunned by it.
I was addicted to the Fez, I guess. It gets in your blood because of the atmosphere. I told you, is different. The people appreciate the music more.
Checked it out and I loved it. Pure Arabic music.
The Fez is, first of all, to me, it's like a home. It was sitting on the floor.
Fez was my home. I go, I come back, it's Fez. They have the door open for me. I love them so much that my life started at the Fez, ended at the Fez.
I went to the Fez, and that was the first place actually I sang with Maroon Saba.
All of us dreamed of it as the height of ambition and prestige to be able to dance in the Fez.
The mindset of the dance community, the musicians and everything was totally different. The Fez opened up, and later Alibaba's and the Seventh Veil and the Greek Village, I think. But the thing at that time, everybody knew where everybody was working. There wasn't that many clubs around. And then, if you got off early, you would go to the Fez. Support them. They got off early, they would come over to Alibaba's, the Seventh Veil. They came over, everybody supported each other.
Downstairs restaurant was always big and open, and that was Dad's design on purpose. There were no dividers, no plants, nothing to inhibit any sight lines in the room. And that wasn't just for the tables to the stage. Those were also so the tables could see each other. He loved the energy in the room that was created by just having it be one big party. Everyone needs to see everyone. And invariably, someone would see someone at the table order a bottle of Red Label, so they would order a bottle of Black Label, and they would order a bottle of Jack Daniels. And it was really about the community and the party and the atmosphere. Upstairs, Sinbad's Cave was a whole different party. I would tell you about it, but I was never allowed up there ever as a child. It was great for a kid because I was up way later than I should have been, hanging out. Had as many Shirley Temples as I could possibly drink. You finally got the last customer out, the doors are shut, and everyone's going home, and you think it's time to go home. Oh, no. Because Norm's, the coffee shop across the street, everyone has to go to Norm's and relive every moment that happened that night. In the club, it's loud and noisy, and People are yelling back and forth at each other. Someone was always mad at someone at some point in the night. Hurry up with the drink, where's the food? Hey, get this, where's the check? And then Norm's was the big therapy session of, I love you, everything's great. I was, at that point, face down, falling asleep in a plate of pancakes.
Upstairs was like this smoke-filled, danger-promising cabaret, nightlife, dark. It was wonderful. I was sucked into it.
We went to the Fez. We saw the downstairs, which is the main show, is downstairs, with dinners and all. And then you get to go upstairs. That's where the fun is.
Downstairs was a very classy dining experience. Wonderful Arabic food.
Upstairs, you were up close and personal. Downstairs, again, was more of the show, the stage, the audience from the public. Upstairs, you felt like you were almost one of the community.
Some of us used to dance downstairs 2 times and once up. And it was fun because we enjoyed the atmosphere of both. I, at that time, enjoyed doing a show, so I liked the more show atmosphere downstairs.
I was an upstairs dancer. So that was where the Arabic community was. And that was the fun place to be.
It was in 1963. I came there with a group of friends, including Vigen. He was a famous Persian singer. Then I saw the dancers. And I thought, oh my God, that's what I want to do.
My parents discovered the Fez when it opened in '59. And as it happens, my grandparents owned a 4-unit apartment complex half a block up the street. So literally the Fez was a few hundred feet away from their front door. My sister and I would be left with my grandparents, and my parents would go to the Fez. So all throughout the 60s, I grew up thinking, when I get older and I'm 21, I've got to go to the Fez because I heard all the stories. And of course, it's cultural for us, because of I was raised essentially around the Lebanese side of my family and that culture. And when I turned 21, sure enough, I started going to the Fez. So my parents had they had the 60s time at the Fez, and I had the 70s time at the Fez up until it closed.
My earliest recollections of the Fez were, my parents were divorced, so my dad had me every other weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which was great, except the busiest nights at the club were Friday and Saturday. So that meant I was at the club pretty much throughout the weekends. He'd pick me up Friday. We'd immediately run to the store because someone had already forgotten something. 2 sprigs of parsley, 2 cantaloupe, whatever we need, and we picked that up. And then we'd go to Middle Eastern Bakery, and I never forget, there was a little old guy with a wooden spatula doing 4 loaves at a time in the brick oven, old brick oven. He'd pull those out and flip them into the basket and flip me a loaf, and hence my addiction for fresh pita bread. And then we would go to the club and get ready for the evening. My whole family was there. My Uncle Fred was there, sometimes bartending, more usually fixing clogged sinks or clogged toilets, taking care of problems there. My sitto, my grandmother, was cooking in the kitchen, so it was family. That's where we all hung out.
Growing up in an Arabic nightclub, it took me a long time to realize that not everybody did that. We were there all the time. It didn't seem unusual when I went back to school on Monday morning and everybody is talking about what they're doing, or the teacher asked what you did this weekend, to say, oh, I was at my dad's restaurant until 3 in the morning on Friday night and Saturday night. I remember loving it, every minute of it. I couldn't wait to go. Even though it was late in the morning when we had to leave to go home, I didn't want to go home. Being around while grandma's in the kitchen cooking, mom's waitressing, dad's behind the bar, dad's up on stage. It was great, and I still look back very fondly of it, and I miss it all the time.
As a child, I thought everybody grew up in an Arabic nightclub and knew belly dancers and musicians, and that was just a normal part of life. As I grew up and continued to be a part of that community, I would meet people and talk to them, and they'd say, oh, you're Lou Shalaby's daughter? And they'd start talking about the Fez, and they'd get this far away, distant, ecstasy look on their face, you know? And I always thought, like, what was it about the Fez? So as I continued my dance career and I would meet and get to know better these dancers that we consider our godmothers, our leaders in our dance form, not just here in Los Angeles, but throughout the world. And each one of them happened to start their career at the Fez, or they talked about how they worked at the Fez for a long time and it was instrumental in their career. And one thing started to lead to another, and I started connecting the dots, and those dots all connected back to the Fez.
If you go to Europe, but take the matches, we have that matches. Everybody knows the Fez. You know, I grew up in the Fez. The first job I get is at the Fez. You know, I feel like it's like my home. I never work any club in my life. I never play for a dancer. The minute I go at the Fez, to the Fez, and I got the job there, I felt like it's my house. I grew up like a school.
When my dad owned the Fez, it was a family affair. He ran mostly the show and dealt with the musicians and the dancers and the promotional end of it. His brother, Fred, who was his partner, ran more of the business end, but also bartended and sometimes played drums. Their mother, Mantura, was the chef and the inspiration really for opening the Fez. Everyone who met them or came to their house fell in love with her food. My aunts worked helping cashier or hostessing or doing whatever needed to be done. The whole idea of the Fez revolved around the entire family.
They always came to the table, and they were wonderful. We'd go in there, we always ordered their food. Good, really good.
For me to walk into something that the music was familiar and the smells of the food were familiar, and to sit there and to be greeted like I was family from the time I first walked through the door. It was the music, the atmosphere, the food, all the things I had heard about as a child growing up. It was part of my culture, but it was also something that went, you know, touched my soul, really. It was really magical for me.
Everybody, it seems to be a family. And they were like, one day, Sadum is playing on the stage, and Barbara calls saying that she was in labor, that she needed Sadum to take her to this hospital. So your dad said, no, I cannot tell Sadum. He cannot leave the stage now, because what am I going to do without the musician? So he goes and takes Barbara. That's when Summer was born.
This is a family working together, trying to make people happy. And the Fez made everyone that was there happy. It made us wonderful talents and made us go out to strive to be better than what we were when we first started. It just allowed us to fulfill our lives, to walk our paths with joy.
1964, I came to get my education here, go to college, and get a university degree. And Uncle Louis had the Fez here. So I started, he took me to Glendale College and got me accepted there, helped me with the process. And then we lived in Glendale at that time. I started working at the Fez as a cashier. And eventually I did everything a person can do at the Fez except play music. I was working Fridays and Saturdays, making enough money to put me through college. Yeah, so the Fez really means a lot to me.
I think the atmosphere at the Fez was open, and it was warm, and it was receptive. It wasn't judgmental. It was just like, you know, it was the place that everybody was lucky to go.
The Fez was home for musicians. You know, there were other clubs, but the Fez was home. The Fez was like the meeting place. The Fez was the place you go and you pour out your tears. You had family there. No matter what was going on, somebody was, hey, what's happening, you know? It was that kind of a place. It wasn't just a business. It wasn't just a, come on, buy your drinks and bye-bye. No, it was really family.
The food was great. Louis used to tell me, if any family comes to the club for the price we charge, they should never go home hungry.
When the Fez opened up, it was like
I mean, what is this? Who are these people? We're going to Egypt. We're going to the land of mystery. Because the Fez was like a movie set, right out of a movie set, the way it was decorated.
And Lou Shalaby was the host. He would greet people, sit with them, and he was actually the ambassador for Lebanese culture. He was acquainted with celebrities. For example, Lee Marvin, Jane Mansfield, Danny Thomas was a regular.
What Lou did was brilliant because he opened an Arabic nightclub in Hollywood. When Badia Masabni opened the first nightclub in Egypt, she was imitating Hollywood. She was imitating the West. She was bringing in Western choreographers. So we've always been imitating them, imitating us. So Lou Shelby's club was the perfect place and the perfect time for what Hollywood or American belly dance was becoming or had always been. Because since the early 1900s, the vision of what an Arabic nightclub or what belly dance looked like was through the eyes of Hollywood. And where was the Fez? In Hollywood. And unless you're like a Gawazi or an Awalim, you're Hollywood. You're imitating some kind of Hollywood.
It drew the interest of everybody in Hollywood. Everybody came to the Fez. They were lined up out in the streets. Movie stars, Marlon Brando, Ann Miller.
Kim Novak, she used to sit right on the floor, across from the stage, and she would say, "Oh, you're my poet." That's the line she had for me, "You're my poet."
William Shatner, we were in a movie with William Shatner, so he came down to the Fez quite a lot. John Boy, all the actors and actresses, it was like Spago's when it started. Everybody that wanted to be seen came to the Fez.
Robert Lansing, he used to come in regularly. Studios would get out, they'd be shooting until late, and then people would stop by from the studios and unwind.
And we go to the Fez for opening night, and your father was there, and Hanis Elfino was there. Maya Medwar was there, and I remember she was pretty spectacular. And Zenuba was incredible.
The movie that I was involved in at the Fez was I would call it a grade B or C or less type of movie. It involved the idea that there was a kidnapped American who needed to be rescued, and a group of women were going to go undercover in the Middle East as showgirl dancers. And the shot that was being filmed at the Fez was the day or night that the showgirls were going to perform in a club and demonstrate that they were real showgirls, and then the next day they were going to go out and turn into commandos. As part of the show that was going on, the belly dancers were the first part of the entertainment, and then the showgirls were to come on. The belly dancers were the two of us that were regularly scheduled to work there, and it was Mariana and myself, Anahid.
Fred recruited me from Shaker's Oasis. He brought me to the Fez in 1967. That was the beginning of my career at the Fez. And I met Mom Shalaby and Lou and all the musicians. And it was the beginning of the rest of my work life. It changed my life.
In 1961, I had a blind date with an Armenian who took me to the Fez, downstairs. We sit down, the show starts. Out comes the first dancer, who was Antoinette. OMG. She was just the most stunning thing I ever saw, and her dance was the most stunning thing I ever saw. So from that time, I was totally hooked.
When I saw Antoinette, it was like I saw for the first time something on the outside of me that I had always felt on the inside of me, but didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to define it or what to call it. And when I saw her, that was it. It went off like a bomb. That's when I knew what I would do.
I started dancing by mistake. I really had no intentions of becoming a dancer. My girlfriends, who 3 of them were Arabic, they were Jamila, Martha, and Teresa Karam, were in this group called Dalal Amr. And they said, come on, come with us. She'll teach you to dance and we'll go carry on. I said, all right. She was basically like a carnival dancer. I mean, she had snakes coming out of the basket. And this just wasn't my idea of Arabic dancing because I'm Syrian. I was brought up with the music and the culture. One of the girls from the group said, there's a club in town. I want to go audition for it. Come with me. I said, fine, I'll come with you. And it happened to be the Fez, and it happened to be owned by Lou Shelby, who I happen to know already. My mother used to sing with Lou Shelby back east in the Maharajans, and he just took one look at me and he said, you're hired. You start Friday. I said, what? I don't even dance. I don't know how to dance. I've never danced solo. I can't possibly. No, you do. My hair was very, very long, and I was olive complected, and I looked like a little Arab girl, you know, which is what the image he wanted, because he really wanted authenticity. He gave me a career that lasted 13 years from that moment on. There was a dancer with me called Maya Medwa and Cosette. Maya was an Egyptian from Egypt. She was a singer and dancer, and she was this great diva, always complaining that everybody was copying her. But she actually was the only person I had seen besides Cosette. To coordinate hands, hips, feet, arms, everything is not really very easy. But Lou would come up to me and say, move your arms a little more. So I'd go, and he'd say, move your hips, and I'd go, you know. And he said, now you have to learn how to put them together, Antoinette. You know, that's the key note here, right? I said, okay, let me try.
He had been importing musicians and dancers from the Middle East until there came a time when there was a problem with their papers. The immigration department started paying attention to them, and it got more difficult to bring foreign dancers, such as Zanuba, such as Maya, to his club. And I think that was a really lucky break in a way for the American dancers.
An oud player by the name of Khamis Alfino gave me the name of Gamila, and I danced with the name Gamila, but mostly I worked in Turkish clubs, and Turks can't say ga, they say ja, so it was Jamila. Oh, my real name is Giuseppina Carmela Angela Gerati.
I'm a second-generation belly dancer, so before I became Suhaila Salampour, I was Jamila Salampour's daughter, and I held that title and still do for a very long time. Being Jamila's daughter and being a child, actually in that era and time, we were brought to the Fez and other nightclubs that were very famous of that time. But the Fez held this iconic position in the nightclub world because it was the first. I don't think that there's a belly dancer today that has not been influenced by the impact that the Fez had on the community.
I think it was 1969 or 1970. That was when I first performed at the Fez, and it was my first ethnic club, and I was out of my mind with excitement.
The dancers that I saw first at the Fez were Zanuba and another dancer named Maya Medwar. She did what I've seen many Egyptian dancers do in their shows. They would stop in the middle of the show and grab the microphone and sing. That really impressed me because, oh, I'd never seen that, and I'd been watching dancers. Later, much later, I found out that Jamila Salampour had watched her and had been taken by a move that she did. It was an outside vertical figure 8, and Jamila decided to name it after the person, gave Maya credit, and ever since then, we've all called it Maya.
When I watched Maya, there were certain ways about the way she moved that were indigenous. You either were from there and you understood it here, and then it came out through your body. And she used to walk with Maya like it wasn't even happening. There was a woman in one of the markets, and I saw her do Maya, you know? And I said to her, where did you learn that? And she said she had seen this woman at the Fez. I said, I used to see Maya Medvardujit. She said, that's the woman I used to watch too.
A major part that I noticed of Zanuba's dance was that she traveled a lot. She wore a full skirt flowing out behind her. She had personality on stage. She had control of the audience. And I remember her covering a lot of the dance floor.
I met a dancer named Zanuba. And I remember, since I was new, I was a young belly dancer starting out, I asked her and what advice could she give me? And I'll never forget it. And I share this with my students and workshops throughout the world, that she said, looked at me and she said, love your audience. And it seemed so simple that at first the impact didn't reach me, but I have never forgotten it. And as I have matured, it means more and more to me. And what a wise thing to tell a new dancer.
Zanuba really set the example of how it should have been, the real essence of an Egyptian dancer to the rest of us. She loved the music. She loved musicians. She would send endearments, speak endearments to the musicians, made each one of them feel that she had a special thing for them. And that would, of course, get their juices going, and they would really play well for her. So it was a sensuous experience. She took such care of herself. She would perfume her whole body, was rubbed with perfumed oils, and her veil. She would come out and set this whole scene. She was the consummate Oriental dancer.
I was the second belly dancer in Los Angeles. I danced belly dancing in Baghdad, and I just came back. That's when I met Lou Shelby. He said, wow, I met the right belly dancer for my club. The opening night I danced, and there was another belly dancing just came from Egypt, arrived in United States to do a benefit for Arab people. First night we danced, and her husband sang and played drums. I danced once and twice. It was beautiful. The next day, nobody showed up. I'm all alone there, and I didn't know what was going on. I find out that Lou Shelby got his musician with the dancer to do this benefit. And they let me dance alone on a record. And I was not happy. I quit. I said, I'm not coming back. That's when Lou Shelby and his brother Fred came to see me the following day with red roses. Please forgive us and please come back. I took a few minutes. I said, okay, I'll come back. And I did.
On my 21st birthday, they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to see a belly dancer. So my mother asked around which was the best place, and we went to the Fez on July 30th, 1971. And I saw Fayrouz and Marta Schill.
I hadn't been there yet, but I heard what everybody was saying, and what they were saying made me just think it was like, oh. Someone asked me to come there to perform, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on the same stage that all these dancers that I have looked up to have been on, and it was the greatest, greatest honor to be on that stage. Belly dancing has fed my heart, my soul, and my family.
It was a great job to have while you're going to school. It's on the weekends and you get to study between your sets. It's perfect.
People sat in the dressing room and studied and went on to become attorneys, one I know, doctors. It was something you could do and, for example, still go to school.
I think I started working at the Fez maybe in '62. From then on, I never had a regular job. I probably wouldn't have had a career if it hadn't been for the Fez.
Helena Vlahos would roll all the quarters and dollar bills and carry on her tummy. She was a wonderful dancer. But she had this trick she did, and it was different from anyone else.
I am known for unique abdominal dexterity because, I eventually learned to roll 9 coins on my belly where I can make them go up. I'm in the Guinness Book of World Records for unique abdominal dexterity.
The first time I danced at the Fez was 1982. It was downstairs with a 3-piece orchestra. It was fantastic. Diane Weber, a very well-known actress, model, and belly dancer. She was my teacher. She created, I think, an environment for Americans to learn belly dancing. I became actually the managing director of the Perfumes of Araby when Diane kind of scaled back her activities. We produced our own shows, and what I wanted to do was put belly dancing on the stage in a format that would make it an acceptable family entertainment in the broad sense to the public, and make it more accessible rather than just a nightclub act. There were not very many places that you could see it on stage at that point. And in 1980, we did the first staged show, and we did a major show every year after that. And by about 1982, 83, Diane said, well, it looks like you guys are going to do this. So I give you permission to use the name Perfumes of Araby, because she had copyrighted it and trademarked it.
I play the oud and percussion, and I compose. And I've lived in California since 1968. It was in '67. Came out to California to visit some friends, actually. And they said, hey, let's go to this club. They knew I was a musician. I said, all right, I really don't want to go to any clubs, Get enough clubs in New York. They said, yeah, this place is cool too, you'll like it. Vermont and Sunset. Okay. The Fez. We go in, and there's a big dining room downstairs, and they said, well, you haven't seen anything yet, let's go upstairs. I go, okay. To the Sinbad room. Wow, that was the coolest spot. The environment, the cushions, the low seating, the stage. I got to talking to Lou. You want to sit in? I said, sure. I sat in, I played almost the whole night. But then I had to leave in a couple of days. And they said, well, when you come back, come out and check us out. And I did in '68.
The musicians that stand out for me, Sadun Al-Bayeti, second Iraqi man I'd ever met. His music and especially his songs were Iraqi, and they stood out as a contrast to the Lebanese music that was being played by Lou Shalaby with his violin, Adil Sirhan, Richard Hagopian, Richard Barham, Louis Saya. There was quite a contrast to Sadun's music.
I was like, 6 years old, and I had a drum in Baghdad. I was just interested in singing. I had no knowledge of taking, not even a class in the music. When I came to America, I went to theater school. I used to use the dictionary, the Arabic dictionary, to play it like a drum. They took me to the Fez, and I got up and I sang and I played, and Louis took me to the office and talked to me.
There were some excellent musicians at the Fez, and they were there, I believe, for the love of the music, for the passion, and also to keep their cultural heritage going.
I ended up having solos with each musician. I had a wonderful violinist called Kazim Razazan, the best. I had a oud solo with Najib. I had a drum solo with Sadun. It was all extremely exciting. The dance kept progressing and progressing. Sometimes my shows were almost an hour long.
One of the most fortunate things happened for me. The musician decided to go to Turkey with his girlfriend, and they hired Sadun to play the oud. I learned so much from that man. He encouraged me to come and play cymbals when I wasn't dancing. And when I did not know the song, he would look at me like he'd smelled something a little bad. Just look. He talked to me about Makam, and he taught me drum. And since I was a hippie, I used an oatmeal box. It's breakfast, it's your instrument.
Musicians that would come through, play, and then you don't see them again, It was that kind of a place. It was like the Copacabana in New York, people from all over coming. And that's what was really, it was a great music scene. Maroon had his, Aya Melben, his theme tune. It was always going on, Najib Kuri. He'd get into a lot of, they called it Mawal. That's where everybody would just settle down and get into another space. Sadoun, rest his soul, he was always, he's always singing and playing, and he's a great player. He was like a little hero for me at the time.
The music would go through me, I would interpret it, it would go from me into the audience, and the audience would feed it back. In Arabic, it's called tarab. And that's why I kept dancing.
Once you taste tarab, it's addictive. You can't go back. You're in charge of your own sultana. You're in charge of your own self getting there. But suddenly, the whole room, we're standing. Part of the room was in one part of the song, and part of the room was in another part of the song, and the musicians were somewhere else. And it really didn't matter because everybody was on such a high with the music.
I learned do's and don'ts. I learned from being there and listening and having people say, be careful what you dance to. You may be getting a war dance. You may be getting a derogatory music. Learn the language. If you're dancing to a sad song, don't be happy and smiling. If you're dancing to a love song or about food, then you can be happy and smiling. I learned those things from being with the people at the Fez.
This style developed at the Fez, where you'd be wrapped in a cocoon of a veil.
And it was a 5-part show. Fast entrance, I played cymbals a lot of the show.
The music would slow down, and the melodic instruments would take turns playing a takasim, and then the dancer would unwrap the veil and do slow things.
You had to discard the veil off stage so you didn't trip on it, slip on it. And then I would go into a medium tempo. Then there would be another part that was a drum solo. Then there would be really slinky, slow movements.
And then there was the finale, and that would take approximately 45 minutes.
Even though I had a framework of fast, slow, my dance was totally different every show, depending on my music, whatever happened to my music. And because of my having grown up with it, I could anticipate anything they were going to do.
Having to learn the structure, the internal structure of the dance, was difficult.
Dancing in that time, in that period, as opposed to now, everything was improv.
You had to go and watch and go home and practice.
I did learn a lot from watching the other dancers. You can't help it. That's why you go and you watched. Not to take things. I would never take, I call it the soul of the dancer. I just take steps that I know look really good. Then we didn't really have like workshops and having a lot of teachers.
I think that I was lucky not to have a teacher. That sounds odd, but having the freedom to experiment and not having a teacher say, no.
There weren't teachers, really, at that time, very few.
There were no dancers here. And few musicians that they had to depend on who was coming through from the Middle East, or from people like Tawfiq Barham, which were from the Arabic community, and people like Adil Sirhan. And that's how I became a dancer, because there was a demand for it.
One of the things that changed my life at the Fez, among many, was that they pushed me to teach. I resisted, kicking and screaming. The reason is I did not want to analyze what I was doing because I was afraid I'd lose the magic. I'm self-taught, and I was afraid. But I finally gave in and started teaching, and it was one of the best things I've ever done.
My mother's format became the foundation and the body of work that was used for tribal. And my program and my work is now really what the foundation became famous in the tribal fusion world. So it's interesting for my mom and I because the two Salampurs are so responsible for the tribal fusion world. And my mom and I are Oriental dancers, and we enjoy and love, and our passion is dancing to Arabic music. They come in wanting to learn the formats, wanting to learn the steps that they think are what's popular in the tribal or tribal fusion world. But really what we're doing is we're trying to lead them to fall in love with Arabic music and learn to have an understanding and appreciation for dancing to live Arabic bands. Because you can do whatever you want artistically, but learn it all, know it all. And if you're going to do any kind of fusion, at least know what you're fusing from and where you're fusing to. And without the foundation of the live Arabic music, it's you're a little lost.
There was something about the music that just grabbed me. The melancholy, the minor key, and the joy. It just took me, and that's never let go.
The music is the choreographer. At the Fez, the dancing always was colored by the musicians.
A lot of folk songs would be sung, like, back and forth, question, answer stuff. People would respond. We'd do some depkas. We'd do, it depends. And if we played downstairs, a little more formal, because it was a dinner crowd, not that much of a dancing crowd. They did dance, but upstairs was the happening spot.
In Iraqi style, we do the 10-8. 10-8. That's 10-8. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 10-8. Your uncle, Freddie, says, try a couple of numbers with this guy, because we were short on drummers. We're looking for somebody who could do something, anything. And I said, anything? I don't know these Arabic beats that he's playing. Najib was playing. He says, well, it doesn't matter, just watch his foot. That's the one down beat. And then you can get the gist of it, like what's the count? And I could do counts, but nothing else, to be honest with you. So I sat down with him. I said, I'm hiring you starting tomorrow. I have never played Arabic music like I described, different rhythms and different things. But I picked it up eventually. And if I may say so, I became one of the good ones.
I loved the music. It was bringing to life all of the albums that my dad had at home that we used to listen to on the weekends growing up.
They played classical music by Kulthum, by Abdul Wahab, by famous composers and singers and performers.
I started dancing to a rhythm called Shiftateli, which is in the Taksim part of the Arabic music. When they played that Shiftateli for me, that just perfectly fit my body. So I came down insisting that they play Shiftateli. But that's Turkish. I said, I don't care what it is. That's the rhythm I need to hear when I'm dancing.
The music speaks, even without the lyrics. It's like in Indian music the same way. Sometimes you have a long raga, it goes on all afternoon, and the only thing the singer ever sings is, I love the look of the dew on the roses in the morning. And he sings it over and over all afternoon. It's not about the lyrics. It's about the voice that's inside the music. And in Eastern music, you have all these extra notes that Western music doesn't even have. I really learned from Lou and from Antoinette and from Sadoun. They were my main influences to deepen my understanding of how much emotion and power was in Arabic music.
Musicians coming in from all over the world would be playing, would sit in on a few tunes, and so you get to to get different vibe. The students would come from Saudi Arabia, from Libya, from Kuwait. You know, the princes would come out there, they bring in their music and they're singing. Some of these songs I still play and I love, and I just take them on to another level. So it was very enriching environment for a musician.
It is so crucial for a dancer to have an experience with a live Arabic band. It is a part of the actual belly dance journey. It is the same as if you were a flamenco dancer and you were working with live flamenco musicians. You can't separate them because it is the heart and soul of the music that actually inspires the dance. They're not separated. And I think it's my generation actually that took it for granted that I would grow up and end up working in an Arabic nightclub. I assumed that they would be around forever. And in my mom's generation, she actually didn't have that sense of security. She grew up, her relationship to Arabic bands was first with old albums and then the movies. It was like a dream when the Fez opened to actually have Arabic music. This was her dream. So I took it for granted. And when I started working in Arabic nightclubs, I never thought ever that a day would come where it would be difficult to find really great Arabic music, to take my students to go here. And now I have to actually bring in musicians to my studio, and I have to have student nights with a live Arabic band, and I'm teaching my students how to listen and interpret and even just enter and exit to live Arabic music, because it's a lost, dying art.
One of my dad's first quotes to me were, "The only people who don't make it on Broadway were the ones that quit." His opinion was, you just keep going. You go, you knock on the door. If they don't let you in the door, you go through a window. If you can't go through a window, you go down the chimney, you find a way in. His opinion as an artist is that you need to have stories to tell. If you're not out experiencing life, you have no stories to tell as an artist. So he was always very encouraging about getting out and experiencing life, and not only experiencing life, but reading books, going to movies, experiencing life through the eyes of others, and then channeling that into your art.
He was such a beautiful soul. He was such a gentleman, great host, and so sensitive, and it showed in his music.
Lou, he was great. He was always excited about things. He was quite a guy. I miss him.
Well, in the 72, in the 73, I didn't have a car. So Louis used to come every time for a party to pick me up from the house. I remember it well, and it was a big help for me.
We looked at Lou as a mentor for both me and Hamid, because every time we wanted to do something, we really have to ask Lou.
I didn't meet Lou Shelby. Lou Shelby met me. I had an oud, and I had this Russian buffet in the back of the restaurant, and I put the oud upside down on the Russian buffet. All of a sudden, this man comes into the kitchen, and he says, excuse me. He said, do you know what that is? And I said, yeah, it's an oud. And he said, who does it belong to? I said, it belongs to me. And he said, would you be willing to sell it? I said, no. He said, we're going to open a club here, and we're going to have some musicians from Egypt, and one of them is a very good oud player, and I think that he would really like, to buy the oud. And I said, it's not for sale. So then they came back into the restaurant and they said, what about the oud? And I said, it's not for sale, but he can have it. So I gave it to Camille Selfino, because he was a really good musician, and a good musician deserves a good oud.
Lou Shelby was an incredible man. He was very sophisticated. He was handsome. He had a wonderful voice, a mesmerizing voice on the microphone, and he would talk in such mysterious ways and tell such mysterious stories about the 1001 Nights. And it drew the interest of everybody in Hollywood. Everybody came to the Fez.
Lou was an artist. He was a musician, so he understood the music, but he also understood artistic development. of another artist.
Everything to him was about the presentation and was about family and community. The shows were so important to him because he was presenting the Arabic community to the Western world. He was very conscious of that and wanted to present it in such a way that it was always going to be entertaining but was also authentic. He didn't want Hollywood belly dancing or Hollywood, style music. Whenever they came into the club, it was real, authentic Middle Eastern music and dance that they were witnessing. And I think that's part of what was so successful and authentic about it.
Lou Shelby was always encouraging. He encouraged everyone. He was always a very ethical gentleman.
He was somebody that I always looked forward to being with because I always knew that when I left, I would feel better.
He was an educated man, and he wanted to bring the culture of the Arab people to the people, and he did exactly that.
Always a gentleman, treated you differently than any of the other places you danced at.
Lou Shelby was passionate about educating Americans, the audience, for example, about his culture, about the culture, the Middle East in general, about the food. He would explain what they were eating. He would help them with the menu choices.
He had a real developed sense of play, which is, I think, one of the reasons he's so good with improvisation.
He communicated very clearly that certain behavior and attitudes that were expressed toward belly dancers were not acceptable in his club. And he also educated the musicians and other Arab young men that worked for him that we were very smart women. We had a choice. We didn't have to dance for money. We could be doctors and attorneys and do anything we wanted to, and a lot of us are very educated. We had degrees, college degrees. We did it because we loved the dance and the music, and he made that very clear to them.
His political views were so beautiful. There are not many people like Lou, and we missed him so much, especially me.
He always taught me the balance between business and art. And he's always, commercialism and art, and always keep them in balance. He's aware of your bad habits. And one of my bad habits for Oriental dance is to put my arms straight out to the sides because that comes from ballet and modern and jazz. And it was one of the things in a Western style that we default to. And it's not part of Oriental dance. And so I would have my arms out there evidently for a little bit too long because I'd just be having so much fun. I'd glance over at Lou and he'd be going, oh, okay.
After my dad sold the Fez to Maroon Saba, who was one of the musicians at the Fez, they decided to create an album that was recorded live at the Fez of Arabic music. And this was the early 70s, and at that time, there was not a whole lot of belly dancing music available on record. Maroon had the brilliant idea of recording the music that he played in the club for the dancers. He recorded the album with some really amazing musicians, and they put, for the first time, a whole routine on an album, which was really important for dancers because for the first time, they didn't have to depend on live music. They could take their album to a show or a party and put it on and put the needle on the record and let it play.
In the 60s, there were major social upheavals going on simultaneously. The women's movement, the civil rights movement, the anti-war, anti-Vietnam War movement. When you walked into a Middle Eastern restaurant, it was like you walked into the Middle East. And what was going on in the Middle East really wasn't obvious. They did discuss politics, but it wasn't apparent to the customers. It was just an interpretation of a real Arabic nightclub.
In the 60s, all the women were burning their bras, and there was all this business of women's lib. But I had already found my women's lib through dancing.
I was very involved in the feminist movement. The Beatles were going to India, and people were turning on and turning out, and there was a whole lot of, there were lots of mind-expanding activities going on. I didn't participate because dance expanded me, expanded my mind. Being involved in other cultures expanded my mind. That social climate also led to Americans being curious about the exotic Middle Eastern clubs. They would bring bachelor parties and anniversary parties, and it was a big deal for them to go to a Middle Eastern club. It was like exotic. And then, of course, we were exotic.
There was no time like that time in terms of being so wonderful a platform to unleash women. It was the 60s, and the 70s. So culture actually supported the conditions you found at the Fez, because culture was, I think, also allowing people to think more freely and encouraging them to be outside the box. And so you asked yourselves, who am I?
It's not just about going to work and dancing. It is about steeping yourself in everything that means.
The night that Bobby Kennedy was killed, I was dancing upstairs at the Fez. 2 Americans came upstairs for a drink, and they said, "Hey, did you hear what happened? Bobby Kennedy's been shot."
On television, I saw that Kennedy had been shot. And I mean, that was like a trauma, another disaster. First one, now the second one, right? I went to sleep and my mother called me. And my mother said, "You're not gonna believe who shot him." Because we didn't know at that very point who it was that had done it. And she told us, and I had a heart attack because I was very, very close to the Sirhan family.
One of the frightening things that happened is he picked me up one day and we drove to the club, and he opened up the trunk and he pulled a rifle out of the trunk of the car. And I had never seen my dad with a firearm. So I was very thrown by it. And he was such a loving, enthusiastic, caring person that to see him with a firearm at all was very disconcerting. And I said, "Why are you holding a rifle?" And he said, Sirhan killed Robert Kennedy.
In those 60s times when, things were turmoil, there were bomb threats because of Kennedy's assassinations.
Lou Shalaby got a little bit of that fallout because, and probably a lot of other Middle Eastern clubs started getting attention from the FBI, especially since Sirhan's brother was a musician at the Fez.
Well, from that point on, the FBI followed us around. They showed mugshots of me around town. I was really afraid I was going to get shot off the stage, and it affected Adil, affected myself, and affected everybody that was in the Middle Eastern community. Because now there was really hatred going on. People were upset, needless to say. I mean, they had the right to be upset, but they wanted to take it out on the Arabs.
And he said, "We've been getting threats at the club." And it was the first time for me dealing with institutionalized racism, that suddenly the anger and frustration of a nation was pointed at a specific group of people. And it wasn't great being at the pointed end of that.
When the Fez closed, I actually did not know it had closed and went down there one evening to go and found out that the doors were closed. And I wasn't disappointed, I was heartbroken. And I'm thinking maybe it'll reopen, and it never did. So naturally, I started looking around Los Angeles for a replacement. And, went to different places. People would tell me of different clubs in different places. And everything I went to was somehow too commercial, too westernized, a little too touristy, not intimate. It didn't even come close to what the Fez was. And eventually, I stopped looking.
The thing about the Fez that drew me into it as deeply as I was drawn, the thing that separated it from all of the other clubs, was the fact that it was so steeped in its ethnicity.
At that point in time, in the early 60s, there was really no place that you could go to have Arabic food or hear good Arabic music. They didn't even know what a Syrian was. I'm Syrian. What's Syrian? You know, those people, have to explain it like that. They didn't know Arabs. They didn't know what I went to high school in California, and as far as everybody was concerned, I was Mexican because they didn't know what an Arab was.
Before going to the Fez, I didn't know that many Arabs. When I got to the Fez, I met all these Libyan students who they became like my brothers. They need to get together and eat the common food and talk and just be relaxed.
When I went to Egypt to dance, Al Shagara, the name of the restaurant, they helped me to choose a music for me, and they played it for me, and I practiced, and I got that music with me back from Egypt. Zanuba's music. Zanuba, Zanuba, Helwa Khifa. This is the song. The Egyptian way, honey. It's the soft movement. It's not bang, 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 bang. It's soft. You go with your hands soft. You do your movement soft. Not like fighting with the dancing.
I went to Upper Egypt and I lived among the gypsies there and performed with them. And that was, yeah, I liked that. That was a very enriching experience. In Egypt, the dancers pay the musicians. So they get whatever they want because the musicians depend on them for their livelihood. Then it was in 1971, I started traveling and going to the Middle East and filming and photographing and recording the music. Then I became really interested in what I was doing, and I wanted to know more and more about the roots of the dance and how it evolved and what influenced it and what influenced the music.
One of the things I noticed about Egyptian dancers was that they were treated a lot better than we were. And when I came back from Egypt and I looked around and we were changing in little closets and people were walking in on us and no rehearsals and all, and they wouldn't do what we asked when we were performing, I thought, this is wrong. This is, we're an affluent country and we should certainly be treated as well as Egyptian dancers. And that's how I started MECTA.
In '77, we had finally gotten to the point where the dancers, professional dancers, decided that they needed a living wage and good conditions to work. Doors actually on the dressing rooms, no insects. We just decided that we would come up with some sort of a contract that showed a minimum wage. Certainly you could work for more if you had a good draw and that was not it, but a minimum wage. So that's when MECTA was born, and at that time it was the Middle Eastern Cabaret Dancers Association. It was really quite successful, even if contracts were not signed. Clubs would change their conditions.
Lou joined MECTA. He was one of 2 club owners that signed a contract with us.
Everyone wanted to be a member. They wanted to know what was going on. And so it did ultimately become an organization that mainly served the dance community by letting everybody know what everyone was doing everywhere.
The thing about complaining about how things used to be better. People are usually annoyed, and rightfully so, with old people who say, oh my God, it was so much better in the past. Because then the new people don't feel validated. They don't feel as though their contribution is being validated if all old people are running around saying, oh, it was so much better back in the day. It wasn't better back in the day. The fact is we let go of some of the better elements of then.
It's kind of gone away from the Middle Eastern culture into a new culture, which is international.
What dancing in that time, in that period, as opposed to now, everything was improv.
Choreography is great fun when you have 6 dancers performing something. It increases the impact of the moves, and it's wonderful, and it's exciting. What we lost was improvisation. In my era, when you were a solo dancer, everything was improvised. It was never planned or choreographed. Band played, you danced. You didn't have to know what song was coming. You know all the music anyway because you were saturated in the environment. So that element of improvisation also sort of went by the wayside because individual solo dancers, for no reason of necessity at all, would choreograph their pieces. It prevents the spontaneity and creativity. Though the music was created at the moment, the dance was created at the moment. You create it right there on the spot. And your emotional response to that moment of creation is shared with the audience. And everybody goes nuts.
Dancers are competing for gigs today, and there aren't that many.
Now it's a different situation. Before there were not that many dancers. Now there are so many, and so many teachers.
The dancers were so completely different from one another. It's what drew me to belly dance. The fact that you could find who you were and bring it out in the dance. So all of the dancers were vastly different from one another. They all looked vastly different from one another. There was no one body type that was required at all. Slender women, rounder women, different shaped women, tall women, short women, women of all colors. Everybody was in the game. And everybody brought something unique and beautiful and wonderful to the dance, to the art, as a result of this wonderful individuality being expressed.
I have difficulty. I see dancers now who I really enjoyed, but they go to Egypt and they think they have to look like a specific dancer. And it's like, why? Why? You know, this is from here. You can't be a clone.
The world of, quote, belly dancing has changed so much. There is everything out there now. It used to be that there was cabaret and folkloric. Then there was cabaret and tribal. And now there is steampunk. It is this gigantic prism of things that are going on and calling themselves belly dancing. And not everybody is crazy about that.
Many wonderful new evolutions have come to belly dance. There's the element called tribal, and some styles have separated themselves to be distinct, like Egyptian style and cabaret style, tribal style. And many new things have come in that are brilliant. Some of the wonderful elements from the past were allowed to be let go. What should have happened, in my estimation, is that every wonderful thing, every wonderful element that existed in belly dance at that time should have been retained. Some of the skills that we had were left behind. I mentioned earlier floor work, finger cymbals, veil work, things of that nature sort of just got left off.
However, this dance, Raqs Sharqi, evolves, that it does stay true to its roots, and certainly to the music. If you don't follow the music, and you're not interpreting the music, then you're not doing your job. Because it's a very emotional, expressive kind of music. And it's your job to interpret that with your body as well. And I hope we do innovate, and I hope we evolve, but I do not want to see us depart from the roots.
When you get on the stage, you're losing one of the main elements of what was going on here. You've taken the performer away from the audience. And you're supposed to be with the audience when you're doing this. Even in the old Arabic movies, you will see the dancers interacting with the audience. This was a family experience, a cultural experience, an intimate exchange between performers and audience.
My focus was to teach. And I loved performing, but teaching is what I feel. That's what works for me. Watching dancers become dancers. I have a dance studio called Anissa School of Dance. We have Bollywood and ballet and jazz and modern dance and famous productions, TV productions.
I am mostly teaching, and I do teach at Anissa's one day a week. I love teaching right now, and I do love to teach girls that want to be dancers, which is even better than just taking it for a hobby. But at the beginning, of course, I loved performing. I loved dancing.
I still have, I call it my core members of Perfumes of Araby. We aren't doing big annual shows anymore. The economy and the constraints of hiring a union theater is really challenging. I want to present the best possible image, and I bring musicians with me whenever I can.
Now I'm teaching and performing all over the world. I have intensive series on, it's called Journey Through Egypt, and it's from a dance ethnology base. 2 of the 20-hour intensives are held in studios and places around the world, and then JTE 3 is held in Cairo, as only it could. And then the following intensive is in Upper Egypt, the following intensives in Suez Canal, and on as it developed.
It became so loved. Every time you see these conventions, every dancer that's there performing, Tonya and Atlantis, I just was there. And to see those girls perform with so much love, it just makes me happy. It just makes me happy. It's all because of the Fez.
As soon as Shakira came out with Hips Don't Lie, every dancer I know was getting phone calls from students and how many classes do I need to take to become a belly dancer? And where can I take a belly dance? And everybody's dance classes were just packed with students. We live in a more global culture now. We have the internet, we have YouTube, we have people sharing videos. I see, in my opinion, the decline of the live music dancer experience in the nightclubs having happened in the mid-90s. So what happened was certain dancers started choreographing elaborate shows that included sometimes belly dancing, but then it would include a Persian dance and an Armenian dance and maybe a flamenco dance, sometimes samba. And it's impossible to do a show like that with live music. I think when club owners started to see, I can get a whole group of dancers for only a little bit more than what I paid a solo dancer, and you get a group of dancers, lots of different kinds of dances, then it just became easier to do that. In the past, let's say 10 years, when I've tried to promote events that dancers dance to live music, I thought, oh, here I'm doing a service to the dance community and giving them this experience. And then I would have dancers often say, I don't know how to dance to live music. Can I just dance to my CD on the break? One thing led to another. So the dancers don't know how to dance to live music for the most part. Then the venues that have live music want a good dancer, so they're not going to have a dancer who is figuring it out. And that is something that just occurred to me that is the difference between the Fez and these other places. And that is, my dad knew how to spot that potential in dancers. And he knew how to structure his show. So he'd have a baby dancer that was just learning. He'd have a more seasoned dancer. Then he'd have a real pro. And so the young baby dancer would have that opportunity to develop and learn how to dance to live music for Arabic people. We don't have that experience anymore.
The legacy of the Fez lives in every single dancer today. The Fez was about the music, The Fez was about the culture. The Fez was about the dance. It was in America at a time where they didn't have places to go and actually have a sense of community. Of course, the bands and the dancers and the owner were all from the Middle East, but it was beyond that. It was beyond the show. It was beyond what happened behind the scenes. It became a place where everyone who was in this country and left their country, they were home. The Fez was home.
Fez gave legitimacy to the art of belly dancing and music. Everyone, Americans, would flock to Fez and be amazed of what an art form it was. And that's what it gave me. And I'll never, never forget that.
Very early in my life, I knew there was something that I was going to do that would satisfy me tremendously. And I had the passion and the soul of the Arabic people in me. And being able to express that on the stage was one of the most important things that happened in my life.
I know the legacy for me, for the Fez, was always about community, was about family, was about bringing all these people together on multiple nights for really a celebration. And because it was a Lebanese nightclub, it ended up being a celebration about Lebanese food and Lebanese music and the culture. And it just happened that he was Lebanese and his mom was in the kitchen cooking. That's the path it took.
I think the legacy of the Fez is myriad. The influence that he had on so many lives, and we've heard about it from so many people, that it wasn't just becoming a better dancer, it was becoming a better person.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Uncle Louis and the Fez, I wouldn't have been here and I wouldn't have had my education that actually would help me throughout this life in this country.
I was unemployable. All I had is a student visa, and the Fez gave me a chance to go back to school and finish and graduate. I felt very proud of myself.
I'm reaching for that empowerment that those women expressed so beautifully in that era. I'm hoping to honor them, I'm hoping to stay connected with them, and I'm hoping to continue their legacy through what I attempt to open myself up for on the stage, which was always, like Lou Shelby had said, about being one with the music.
It has to be done with class and style and honoring the culture, as well as the love and the joy of what you're experiencing when you're performing and dancing. It's important that as many of us that have an opportunity, that we take that opportunity to have that level be visible to the general public and to all people that love this culture.
And the gift of the Fez to me was taking me to a whole other level of improvisation with artists that responded to me as strongly as I responded to them.
I feel that if we don't know where we've come from, then we don't have a grounding in our art form, and it's hard to flourish from there and maintain something that's true to the culture.
When one is part of history and making history, one is not aware of that until later. And I realize now that the Fez is part of American history. It's about immigrants, it's about a success story, it's about Americans being exposed to another culture and therefore having their lives enriched. And I would say that my life is so rich, richer than it ever might have been, for my exposure to this dance and my long career in teaching and continuing to learn. This dance is like an onion. It has so many layers. I will never completely learn about it. I will never perfect it because I keep learning.
Every belly dancer who comes down the road for many generations and generations and generations to come is going to hear about the Fez. And they're going to see pictures and they're going to see this piece. And they're going to feel like it's their roots.
I didn't realize now that I was part of something. I had no idea I was part of something. That's just what it was, and I was lucky in the time that I started. And now too, as Fayrouz said, history making history. It's what it is. We were part of something, and it was something big, and it won't be forgotten.
I love Fez. I loved Lou Shelby and Fred and their mother. It was the happiest moment of my life. It started at Fez.
I never thought of the Fez as a nightclub. I really thought of it as a, after I began the thing, I thought of it as a supper club. But originally, I thought of it more as a cultural vehicle, in a limited sense. You know,
What did you have in mind when you first opened the club? Did you have the entertainers in mind first?
primarily,
Or
yes,
did-
I had in mind the entertainment. Primarily,
How did you come about organizing yourself so that you finally made the decision to open a club?
well, we used to have so much fun. You know, young people at the college, like the city college, used to have so much fun at our parties, at the Arabic parties. They preferred them to virtually all other parties.
Los Angeles City College?
Yeah, and LACC.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to get such a following for our parties, and it seemed like that there was a large segment of the public, non-Arabs, that liked this sort of thing and enjoyed the dancers, you know,
What did
the Oriental dancing.
What did you have at these parties? You had yourself and
Myself
other
and other singers and musicians, like when boys would come from Baghdad or from here, George Sabah. We used to have
I
lots of
remember,
fun
yeah.
going to parties.
Which
and we were-
dancers did you have?
How many what?
Which dancers did you have?
Well, there was only one professional dancer of repute, and that was Kenza Omar.
Yeah, tell me about Kanza Omar.
Oh,
I
boy.
want to know.
She's something else.
What?
Now, God rest her soul, she's dead now. She was doing a lot of movie work, and when I came to LA in '49, I met her,
Mhm.
and she was such a charming person. Her dance never impressed me, but it impressed millions, you know, hundreds of people. And
Well, what did she do when she danced?
more of a Turkish type thing, you know, hop, feet, things. I never gave it enough thought in them days, you know.
Mhm.
I was more interested in the music.
But her dance did not impress you.
Not particularly, but as a personality and softness and charm, and she was terrific. I mean, she captivated anyone that came in contact with her.
I heard that she used to do a back bend and pick up a chair in her teeth and pull it up.
I didn't see it. I heard she did it. It must have
Yeah.
been in her younger days.
Uh-huh. Well, how old was she when you met her?
Who knows?
She
What- there's
died
one-
when she was 42, so she couldn't have been very old.
Probably when I first met her, let's see, in '49, she died in 50 something, 60, no, 57, somewhere around there. I don't recall when she died.
Yeah.
She died of a disease, so she must have been still fairly young.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing, you know, with women and with artists in particular, we never know their age. We don't think of them in terms of age. At least I don't.
I'm
I
glad to
think-
hear that because I'm going to sock it to you in a minute.
Yeah, I think many people who are entertainment committees, club owners, we're all stuck on the youth orientation. I'm a victim of it to some extent. However, I would not hesitate if I had the clientele that I used to have. I wouldn't hesitate in hiring a woman of 40 or 50, possibly even 60 if I knew she was 60.